Hi friends, welcome back. I hope you all were doing well. I back with another part of external commercial borrowing. It's a part 2 where we gonna study about the foreign capital and its form, the denomination of ECB, various routes under ECB and the ceiling limits under ECB. So let's begin. Let's start with foreign capital. Now, what is this foreign capital means is foreign capital is basically a foreign fund, right? So it's basically a inflow of foreign funds or foreign capitals into our domestic country from a foreign country, right? In simple words, whenever the fund is flowing from a foreign country to our domestic country, that is called foreign capital. So the foreign capital can be obtained in multiple ways, right? What are those ways? These can be in the form of foreign investment, it can be in the form of concessional assistant, it can be in the form of non concessional assistant. Now, what are these ways? Let's study about foreign investment. It is basically an investment. Either it can be in the form of FDI, either it can be in the form of FPI. Let's start with FDI. FDI stands for foreign direct investment. So basically it's a active investment. Now what is the active investment means? Basically it is giving the investor a right of ownership and managerial control. Right? So it is basically an investment either by an individual or either by a firm or any entity in the business which is operating in some another country. So right? So FDI is what? It is a investment by an individual or by a firm into the business of a another country. Right? So there are several ways by which a FDI can be raised. Now what are those ways? Either it can be raised by creating a joint venture, either it can be raised by establishing a subsidiary, either by raising or it can be raised by acquisition or merger of any existing foreign entity, right? So basically FDI is what? It's an investment which is directly made into some another country. Now what is this FPI is? As I mentioned, FDI is what? It is an active investment, but FPI is what? It is an passive investment. Passive investment basically means it's only give the investor the right of only ownership control. No managerial control right is given to the investor. Right? So here the investor is purchasing the security or the assets. Right? So here security means any sort of bonds, stocks or any other financial asset. So if I want to say in simple words, then I can say that FPI is what? It's investment in financial assets of a foreign country. Right? Now let's move forward. Now we will talk about the concessional assistant. Now what is this concessional assistant is? Concessional assistant is basically another form of foreign capitals, right? So it either may be in the form of loan or either it may be in the form of grants, right? Now let's understand both in separately. Now what is loan? It's basically a borrowing, right? It's a borrowing. So these borrowing can be obtained from a country or from a financial institution or from any other agencies, such as institutional agency like World Bank, IMF, IFC. So these were the agencies which is providing loan facility to the borrower located in worldwide, right? So if borrower is borrowing a loan, so it carries an obligation for repayment, means it has to make the payment. Whereas grants means these are the funds which are given by a general public or by a charitable trust or any other organizations, right? But here this grant does not carry any sort of obligation of repayment. So this is need to be remember. So concessional assistance can be in the form of loan or it can be in the form of grant, right? Let's move forward. Now we will talk about the another form of foreign capital. This is the non-concessional assistant, which include the external commercial borrowing and NRI deposit. So NRI deposit, basically these are the deposits which are made by a non-resident Indian, and these deposit is in foreign currencies, which a non-resident deposit in our Indian bank. So that is called non-resident Indian deposit, right? External commercial borrowing, as we all know that it's a borrowing by a borrower or it's a loan availed by a eligible resident entity from a non-resident entity which is a lender, right? So this is called an external commercial borrowing. Now let's move forward. Now we will talk about the ceiling limits. I have divided the ceiling limits based on the type of borrower and based on the maturity period, right? So if it is an infrastructure company or it is a manufacturing company or it is a NBFC or core investment company, then these all the four companies can avail ECB up to $750 million, right? Now let's learn about these four companies. Infrastructure company, as the name suggests or name shows, right? These are those companies which are engaged in developing systems or engage in developing a process basis on which a company's operation will be carried out, right? So the main aim of this infrastructure company is to build a platform where the employees of a company can do the task of a company or in developing system or a process by which a company can carry out its operations, right? So these are those companies. For example, Larsen and Toubro Limited is the one of the type of infrastructure company. It is not an infrastructure company, it is also a manufacturing company also, right? So infrastructure company can also avail ECB up to $750 million. In previous existing guideline of the ECB, they can only avail ECB up to $500 million, but now it has been increased up to $750 million, right? Let's move on to manufacturing company. Now what is manufacturing companies is basically manufacturing company is what? It is those type of company which is creating a finished goods or final goods or we can say the new products, right? By using raw material as a input, right? So these are those company which is using raw material or a component parts as an input to make out a final product. Means such companies indulge in a manufacturing process, right? For example, Maruti Suzuki, Mahindra Limited, Ashok Leyland, Larsen and Toubro. These were what? These are the manufacturing companies. Now let's move forward. Now this company also can avail ECB up to $750 million. Now we will talk about the NBFC, IFC, AFC. Before understanding about this, first let's take core investment company, right? CIC. CIC means the core investment company. It is one of the type of NBFC, right? So basically these companies are those which is holding the stake in group companies. These stake can be in the form of investment, just like in the form of equity shares, sorry, in the form of equity shares, preference shares, bonds, debenture, debts, loan, right? So, as we know that CIC is what? It is a type of NBFC which is holding stake in a group company. Such stake can be in the form of equity, preference, bonds, debenture, loan, right? So the main business of these entities what? It is the acquisition of shares, acquisition of securities, right? So such companies can also avail ECB up to $750 million. Now let's move backward to the same. Now we will talk about the NBFC, means the IFC one and the AFC one. Now what is this? Let's begin. NBFC, these are the basic types of NBFC: housing finance companies, infrastructure finance company, mortgage guarantee company, investment company, asset finance company, core investment companies, and loan company. These are the basically types of NBFCs. But here, those which can avail ECB up to $750 million is whom? It's the infrastructure company, infrastructure finance company, it's the core investment company, and the asset finance company. These three companies, these three types of NBFC can only avail ECB up to $750 million. So, as I have mentioned, what is infrastructure companies? So, no need to repeat it again. So, these type of NBFC provide loan to infrastructure companies, right? Asset finance company, these companies basically provides financing for the physical assets such as automobiles, tractors, right? So these three, which are these? The core investment company, CIC, AFC, that is asset finance company, and the infrastructure finance company. These three can avail ECB up to $750 million, right? Let's move backward to the same. Now we will understand the ceiling limit based on the maturity period. MAMP means minimum average maturity period. This period will be minimum of 3 years if the value of ECB is within $50 million. If the value of ECB is within $50 million, then the minimum average maturity period should be 3 years. Right? Now let's move forward on the same part. Right. Let's first cater this maturity period aspect only. MAMP will be 5 years for the ECB above $50 million. If the value of availed ECB is above $50 million, then the maturity period should be minimum 5 years. Right. Now let's move backward on the same based on the category of borrowers. If the borrower falls under the category of software development sector, then it can avail ECB up to $200 million. Now what is this software development companies? These basically are those companies which are indulge in activities like designing of software or applications, developing of softwares, or maintaining of software, right? So the aim of or the task of software development company is to design software, to develop software, maintain software, fix any bugs in that software or that applications, so that those software or application can help in solving specific problem or achieving any sort of desired outcome, right? So such companies which are indulged in the same sectors can avail ECB up to $200 million. Entity which are engaged in a microfinance facility provider, then they can avail $100 million. Microfinance entity basically are those companies which are providing finance facility to the low income group basically, right? Now let's move forward. Now we will talk about the route of ECB. Basically, there are only two routes under ECB. One is the automatic route and the second one is the approval route. Let's start with the automatic route. As the name suggests, automatic routes. So here, no no prior request to the Reserve Bank of India is need to be made. Means no approval is required from Reserve Bank of India. So this type of document under ECB can be examined by the AD category 1 banks. Means if the borrower is borrowing an ECB and that ECB is falling under the category of automatic route, then the bank can itself examine the document, right? If the category falls under the approval route, then the prior Reserve Bank of India approval is required. After the bank is examining the document, then it has to send those documents to the Reserve Bank of India for their approval. Whereas in automatic, the bank can itself examine the document. But in approval route, it has to examine the document. Along with that, it requires the Reserve Bank of India approval. Now let's move forward. Now we will talk about the denomination of ECB. Basically, one can avail ECB either in foreign currency or either in INR currency, right? So FC stands for foreign currency and this is the INR ECB, right? So the track 1 and track 2 comprises of foreign currency ECB, right? And the track 3 plus the rupee denominated bonds are under the category of INR ECB. The track 1, it's basically a medium term ECB loan. It's a medium loan which is in a foreign currency, wherein the minimum average maturity period should be between 3 to 5 years. That will be fall under the category of track 1. Whereas the track 2, it's basically a long term loan. It is also a foreign currency loan, but it is a long term loan, right? Whereas the track 1 includes the medium term loan only. Whereas the minimum average maturity period should be range between the 5 to 10 years. Wherein in track 1 it's between 3 to 5 years. The last track is the track 3. It is basically a medium term loan. But this type of loan will of INR currency. Right? Here also the minimum average maturity period should be lie between the 3 to 5 years. It also included the rupee denominated bonds and masala bonds. Right? So this is all about this video. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Thanks for watching.